Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Ruthless RAE Podcast. This podcast is back at last. It was a little bit crazy due to the holidays, and also work as well. Got a new promotion there as well, so it's kind of been a bit busy lately. But now we are back with Ruthless RAE Podcast, and we are returning with none other than Mr. Adam Wright. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. Congratulations on the promotion.
Thanks, Adam.
And thanks again for having me on. I'm excited to talk about.
No problem.
I am excited to talk about this pay-per-view.
Yeah, the pay-per-view that we're going to be talking about tonight it's actually an interesting one. I think this will actually be a really interesting show to talk about. Not necessarily because of the show itself, but just the idea of the show. Great American Bash 2004. WWE ended up reviving a WCW pay-per-view, which like after the invasion, things were kind of quiet for WCW for a bit, but now this is more or less like the first kind of revival of a WCW idea.
Yeah, this, for those who weren't watching at the time, or quite possibly not even alive at the time, the Great American Bash was a long-running pay-per-view that started back in the 80s under the old NWA banner. It was a legendary show. Had legendary moments, and then when the invasion happened and Vince bought WCW, he pretty much mothballed all of WCW's properties. So when they announced that the Great American Bash was coming back, it just everyone took notice. This felt like a big deal, and they ran it in Norfolk. I believe out at the Norfolk Scope, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I think it did. I think it was.
So they ran a WCW pay-per-view in an old Crockett town in Norfolk, Virginia. So WWE did put time and thought into how to present this. Unfortunately, that's where the time and thought stopped.
Yeah.
I remember being very excited about this pay-per-view, seeing the Great American Bash come back. And we'll get into why the show didn't live up to the hype. But it was very important at that time. Unfortunately, the Bash just became another pay-per-view, and they eventually did away with it again. But that wasn't because it was a bad idea to bring the show back. It's that the WWE never took care into presenting the pay-per-view in the way it used to be presented. So when the WWE doesn't care, how can I, as a fan, care?
Yeah. And it's interesting that they brought back like Great American Bash, which I think is one of WCW's flagship shows. I would say it's almost like the SummerSlam for WCW, I would say.
That was their. I mean, to me, when I think of the old NWA Crockett WCW shows, to me, it's Starrcade, obviously. This is probably number one. And then number two is the Bash. Kind of like WrestleMania and SummerSlam are kind of 1 and 2 now. Some would say Royal Rumble is number 2, but I think SummerSlam has jumped the Rumble, and considering how they present it. So
I would agree.
The Bash was a big deal. And for the WWE to bring it back at that time was a big deal. Like I said, that's kind of where it stopped. But like I said, this had some juice to it, basically.
Yeah, and they bring back Great American Bash. And what I was going to ask you, I want to make this a bit of a discussion point. And they've done this a bit lately, specifically with Starrcade, even though it's more or less a glorified house show basically nowadays. But is there any other WCW pay-per-view or ECW pay-per-view for that matter? Is there any particular WCW pay-per-view that you would like to see WWE bring back?
Oh goodness. I can think two of off the top of my head. Halloween Havoc.
That's mine as well. I would love to see him bring Halloween Havoc back in that giant pumpkin stage.
If they brought it back with the pumpkin stage, it'd be the show of the year just for the pumpkin alone. And I know some might roll their eyes at this, but I'd like to see them bring back Bash at the Beach.
Same here. Same here. I would love to see him bring back Bash at the Beach back.
Because
greatest arena in WCW NWO Revenge. I'm just going to say that right now.
Yes. Oh God, you're bringing me back. Bash at the Beach and Halloween Havoc, because those shows felt they were conducive to their time in the calendar, if you will. Bash at the Beach had that spring break, collegiate, co-ed kind of feel to it. Like, it was a pay-per-view, but it also kind of felt like it also could have been shown on MTV at the time. In Halloween Havoc, I mean, it just personified the late fall, just that whole season at the time. It's not that either pay-per-view had any historical significance like the Bash or Starrcade. It's just that they were fun shows.
Right.
I know WWE tried to bring back the Clash.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Later on, after they brought back the Bash, but even then, they never fully embraced Clash of the Champions the way they thought they could have.
Yeah, like it was really just it was a name only kind of thing. It felt more like a continuation of Night of Champions than it did as Clash of the Champions. Especially since they left the word out of it.
Well, yeah, what they did was they didn't want to do Clash of the Champions because they didn't want to bring in the WCW imagery, the NWA imagery, so they turned it into Night of Champions, and it was the same idea. It's just that at least Clash of the Champions had a prestige to it, and Night of Champions always felt like just a C pay-per-view. Even if all the titles were defended, they never truly took care of the event. When you have these shows, you see what happens when WWE takes care of a pay-per-view and when they just run a show to run a show. WWE takes care of WrestleMania, SummerSlam, the Royal Rumble, Money in the Bank. And then we see what they do to a formerly great show like Survivor Series, which is a big four pay-per-view, but they turned it into just another show.
They made it bragging rights, basically.
Yeah, the only time of the year where the both brands go to war, and we're all like, no, it isn't.
Except for the Royal Rumble match.
Except for the Rumble match, except for bragging rights, except for WrestleMania, except for SummerSlam, except for any TV Super Show they want to run, except it doesn't matter. So they never took care of the Bash. They never took care of the Clash of Champions concept. I'm kind of half thankful that they made Starrcade a house show, because I don't think they'd want to put the time and effort into Starrcade, because at the end of the day, Starrcade is supposed to be as big as WrestleMania. And we all know
Except
that,
in '94 when Bruce Beefcake and Hulk Hogan wrestled each other in the main event, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, whoever thought of that needs to be brought up on war crimes and sentenced to life in prison at The Hague. No, but that is another show for another time. But so to kind of get back on track, I think if WWE really wanted to reintroduce those WCW concepts, Bash at the Beach and Halloween Havoc would be two great options.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Bash at the Beach and Halloween Havoc, are probably my top two as well. So we can go ahead and go into the first match here. And one more thing, I would just want to mention the intro. I actually really like the intro here for the show.
Yeah, I liked it too. They, like I said, they did do everything they could to put their best foot forward with the show, which I'm thankful for. So the arena, the pay-per-view, and of course the intro. They did really try with this.
Yeah, so we go to the first match of the night, which is a fatal four-way elimination match for the United States Championship. John Cena versus Rene Dupree versus Booker T versus Rob Van Dam.
It was weird hearing Cena get universally cheered, wasn't it?
Yeah. And him mentioning G.I. Bro in his rap before the match.
Called Booker T a knee-high-ho.
Yeah, some of Cena's raps haven't particularly aged very well.
Yeah, some other things you couldn't say today. But it was. I forgot how over, basic thugonomics John Cena was.
Because he was. He really, really was.
He was massively over. And he also was still wearing another throwback jersey. He had on the Michael Vick Virginia Tech jersey, which I thought was pretty cool, given I think it'd be just a few years after that Michael Vick would get into his trouble.
Yeah, something else that didn't age very well.
Nope. RVD.
Yeah, something about that last name Vic doesn't ever end well, does it?
Not in WWE. We don't need to bring that up, by the way. RVD massively over. Rene Dupree.
Comes out with a dog to the ring. That's pretty much all he has going for him at the moment.
He was only 20 then.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to sit here and try to say that Rene Dupree was some great wrestler, because he wasn't. But man, I don't think they did that kid any favors. Because he was only 20.
Yeah.
I think they kind of just took the easy road with the whole he's French LOL instead of giving him something to work with. But that's neither here nor there. And Booker T's the old veteran who was working heel at the time
Yeah.
And,
Which I don't even think lasted very long. I think by Survivor Series he's back to being a face. Because they literally had nobody else for Bradshaw to face.
oh, yeah. Yeah, this pay-per-view is the beginning of all that, and we'll get to that later. But as far as this match goes, it was actually a pretty hot opener.
Yeah, I actually think this is one of the better matches of the night, which, I mean, it's not really saying that much, but it was pretty good for what it was. I did like that Booker T was just kind of standing there outside the ring for most of the match.
Yeah, it was one of the few times where you see actual logic and intelligence being put into the match. They're not all being stupid. Because a lot of times in WWE, you see guys not acting logically. And this is one of those times where they were, and nobody complained. Booker T was out and on the outside of that match for what, a whole 5 minutes?
If that, yeah.
So and John was outside for probably a good couple minutes. And they built around that fact that they stood outside so long. Guys finally got upset, and they worked that into the match. I would say, though, there wasn't a lot. I mean, for a fatal 4-way elimination, there wasn't a lot to this match. They kept it fairly simple.
Yeah. RVD is eliminated first, which I'm not a huge fan of.
Yeah, I wasn't either, but then again, I think they did that to make sure that Cena got the reaction, even though he was massively over. They wanted to make sure the fan sympathy wasn't split. So they got rid of RVD. They let RVD do 2 massive 5-star frog splashes, and then he got immediately rolled up 1, 2, 3. It's like, thanks for the high spots, Rob. Now you can leave.
Yeah. And Dupree and Booker form a very brief alliance that doesn't last very long.
No.
Lasts like a minute at best.
That didn't last long. They did give Dupree some shine in this match.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So because he did the lion's share of the offense in the beginning portion of that match when he was working Cena, and then he was working Van Dam, and then he worked Booker a little bit, but not as much. And then Dupree was the next one eliminated, right?
Yeah, he was the next one eliminated. The final 2 are Booker and Cena, which is a bit of a precursor to what the rest of the summer is going to be. Because after this, they end up feuding with the United States title they feud for the United States title through No Mercy in October. So it just does go on for a few more months.
Yeah, they were feuding already a little bit.
Yeah.
So they basically continued what they were doing after this. So basically, the right 2 guys were at the end of the match. They did the back and forth. I totally forgot about the throwback as a move.
I think that move's better than the AA, to be honest.
It is, but Cena can never hit the throwback to save his life.
Yeah, true.
And then, but it went pretty quick. Foot to the stomach. AA 1, 2, 3. Cena retains. And crowd goes wild. Then they kind of went on to the next match, kind of.
Yeah, it was a bit abrupt, a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it was just an opener, but I mean they got what about 15 minutes, so it wasn't too bad of an opening match. Just they did their thing, and then Cena went over, and yeah. Not much of a story else here to tell. So what happened after this one? Because I, I tried to watch everything real quick, and I've already kind of forgotten.
Yeah, that's how forgettable the show is, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we do get a brief backstage segment where Troy Haas has a confrontation with Kurt Angle, and that leads to an improvised match, an impromptu match, if you will. Luther Reigns versus Troy Haas.
Oh. Huh. Luther Reigns. Matt, do you want to explain Luther Reigns, or should I?
He is the most generic 2004 wrestler ever. I think that's the best way to describe him.
He is cut out of Central Jobber casting.
Yeah. He's as generic as they get.
And they tried to make him into a badass, and it's like, no. This was basically a squash match.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's really not much to this match.
They were
aside from it being boring as hell.
Right. They tried to get Luther Reigns over in this match. Problem was, he's Luther Reigns, and you couldn't get him over with a spatula. So,
yeah.
Poor Charlie Haas.
I don't even think he even was in WWE for much longer after this. I think he might have been there for maybe if that. After that, he's kind of disappeared.
He was gone within a year.
Yeah.
It didn't take long. And then I'm still trying to recover from Luther Reigns. After that match, if I remember correctly, is the
after this, by far match of the night, Rey Mysterio versus Chavo Guerrero for the Cruiserweight title.
Yes, I remember now. This is when Chavo was working his dickhead heel angle.
Yeah.
And they went nearly 20 minutes. Hell of a match.
Oh, yeah. Like, easily match of the night. Granted, they don't really have a lot of strong competition, but this is still a great match. Probably, from what I've seen, probably the best match that they've had together. Like, honestly, I think this is the match that they should have had at WrestleMania 20.
Yes.
Instead of the Cruiserweight Open.
Yeah, they put on a show here. Two of the best luchas in the world. You can't really say there aren't enough adjectives to describe Rey Mysterio, especially at this time, because his knees weren't gone yet.
Yeah.
So he's still, slingshotting and rolling and, going to the. And Chavo's one of the. I mean, Chavo can fly, but Chavo's one of the best mat wrestlers out there.
Yeah,
So,
what I do like about this match is that Chavo does work over Ray's knees a lot of the match, like especially with the single leg Boston Crab.
right. Was this the match that predate what going into this match? Was this the one where Chavo caught Ray's leg in the steel scaffolding on the SmackDown prior?
Um, I can't remember. I'm trying to remember if that was around this time
Or was that
or if that was
WrestleMania?
later on in 2007 or
Because
2006. I'm not sure.
because that sticks out in my head. But I mean, these are the two uh, best match of the night. Two the best of the best workers on SmackDown at the time. So
Yeah.
they really gave them all of the chances to be successful here. They gave them the time to tell a story. They told a great story. There was meaning behind it. There was something on the line, and it all came together. Yeah, match of the night by far. I mean, this is a 4-star match, easy.
Yeah, definitely. This was a great match. It really was a great match. For me, match of the night, easily. Rey Mysterio wins with this. I don't even know what you would call it. Like, I don't necessarily want to say it was a Canadian destroyer. It was like some kind of like sunset flip power bomb or something like that.
Was
Like
it
it's
that?
like
Was it that?
it's like
The seesaw power bomb?
I think so because he reverses the glory bomb into that.
Yeah, it's that flip. It's not a sunset flip into a power bomb, but he's basically did it all in one continuous motion. So yeah, it was cool. And something only those two could do.
Yeah.
And then after that, we went into, hey everybody, do you remember Kenzo Suzuki
Ah.
with Hiroko?
Yeah, this is the debut or the pay-per-view debut rather of Kenzo Suzuki.
And they wrestled Billy Gunn.
Yeah, that's so weird. Would you rather watch a Kenzo Suzuki match or a Minoru Suzuki match?
I would watch Minoru Suzuki match every day of the week and twice on Sunday because Minoru Suzuki could kill me.
Yeah.
The great thing about this match is A, I had to remember that Kenzo Suzuki was a thing.
Yeah.
And two, that Billy Gunn again had another singles run in this company.
Yeah, I think this might have been one of his last hurrahs in WWE around this time. Because I think he gets released later on in the year.
Yeah, he doesn't stick around for much longer because this is right before he goes to TNA.
Yeah. And I think the thing with Kenzo Suzuki here, it's actually quite interesting because this is a bit of a repackaging because he was originally supposed to be on Raw as Hirohito, a anti-American foreign heel who still held a grudge against America for World War II.
Hence the name Hirohito.
Yeah.
Boy, were they being subtle.
Yeah.
He should thank his lucky stars that got changed to Kenzo Suzuki.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he tried to do...
I do like his entrance here, though. I the entrance from
It's a...
the throne.
He had a good intro. Like the Titantron, the music, it was a good intro. It was a shitty character.
Mm-hmm.
His finishing move was a side sweep.
And here it looked awful. It looked terrible.
I'm sorry. When you can't work Billy Gunn, you're a shit wrestler. It's that kind of simple. Because
Maybe it's around this time. Maybe it's around this time that I should tell you that Kenzo Suzuki and Rene Dupree were tag team champions.
That's right. I totally forgot. Oh my god. That's right. They were doing the anti-American bullshit then.
Yeah.
Oh, I totally forgot. That makes me want to throw up.
You gotta love 2004 SmackDown.
They tried, man. They tried with Renee and doing different things, and they really did try to push Kenzo Suzuki as this next great superstar. But good God, they were awful.
Yeah.
That is right. I totally forgot they were tag champs. Who did they win it off of?
I can't remember. Like, I want to say Mysterio and RVD. I could be wrong, but I feel like it was.
Please don't hurt me like that. Please don't hurt me like that.
No, actually, it was Billy Kidman and Paul London that they won it from. They lost them to Mysterio and RVD.
Was that coming off that long run when London and Kendrick were champions?
No, I don't remember how long they held that for.
Because weren't London and Kendrick the longest running SmackDown Tag Champions?
Yeah, they were. That was in like 2007, 2006, 07.
So this was
Kidman and London only held it for about 63 days. They only held it for a couple of months.
Okay. So it was London and Kidman, not London and Kendrick. Okay. I'm trying to get my timeline straight, people. Because I just had the news drop to me that Suzuki and Dupree were tag champions. Wait a minute. Neither one of them came out with the belt.
No, the Dudley Boys were champion around this time.
Okay. So it was either later on. Okay, you're right.
Yeah, it was later on. It was like I think it was like around the time like No Mercy or something like that when they won it.
Yeah, you're just throwing me some of these curveballs, man, and oh, yeah. Like I said, this was an okay match, but I'm being generous.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, if you can't work with Billy Gunn in a match, you're a shit wrestler. Because Billy Gunn could work with anybody. This was just bad. Oh, yeah, I might have to drink tonight to wash some of this off. And so after that match, oh my God, it actually gets worse.
Yeah, after this, Sable versus Tori Wilson. I think this was the first actual wrestling match that Sable and Tori did. They feuded for a bit in 2013. That I don't think they ever really had like an actual match. Like they more so did like bikini contests and stuff like that. But I don't think they ever wrestled.
I mean, they only
And
did
here,
the stuff Sable was good at.
yeah, and I think this is like Sable's last time in WWE. I think after this, she's out the door.
Yeah, she didn't stick around. Thank God. Yeah, here's the thing, folks. I don't have anything nice to say about Sable.
Yeah,
Because
this was a rough match to watch. Like this is easily the worst match in the show. It's not even close.
is this the worst pay-per-view match of that year?
Man, it's up there. It's certainly up there.
Because here's the thing. Sable was never a wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. She was a good-looking woman who looked good in whatever they put her in. And they stuck her outside. And that's what she did. They never should have made her a wrestler. They made her a wrestler because she completely ruined Mark Merrow's career. And they had to do something with her. She leaves the company, comes back. Why did they bring her back in the first place? I'll never understand.
I don't even know.
I think it was because Vince finally could live his fantasy about making out with Sable on live television.
Maybe.
Because that's what he did.
Yeah.
Which, don't go back and watch that. It makes you want to throw up.
Boy, does it.
And if we
I had to watch that entire freaking storyline for the podcast, and it was terrible.
And here's the other thing about Tori. Tori was never really a wrestler either. She wrestled.
I mean, she was better than Sable. I mean, it's not saying much, but she was.
Look, I don't like to disparage the dead, but Mae Young was a better wrestler at 80 than Sable was. And it wasn't particularly close. This whole feud was generally just disgusting. You know, It's really one of the bad old days in women's wrestling. It makes me.
I mean, and on Raw, it wasn't much better because they were starting to do that Kane and Lita storyline. So on Raw, it wasn't much better.
Oh God, you brought that up. Snitsky. It wasn't my fault. That's where all that's happened. And, oh, God, thank God for Sasha Banks and the other women.
Yes. And especially the man, Becky Lynch.
Yeah, she's all right.
All right. How dare you, sir?
But, hey, got the cover of the PWI.
Well deserved.
Absolutely.
Should have been number one if it wasn't for that weirdo Ronnie. But that's a story for another day.
Yes. But yeah, this match is just blood. It's gross. It's not good. Sable left the company, like you said, pretty shortly after.
Yeah, I think she had I think they ended up having a rematch on SmackDown, and then after that she was out of there. And did you notice that the finish of this was botched beyond belief?
Shocking. There was a botch in a Sable match. Yeah, there was.
Sable like rolls up Tori Wilson, and she does roll her up, and neither of Tori Wilson's shoulders are down, and the referee doesn't even notice it. I'm surprised it was Nick Patrick doing the count. That's how bad it was.
You and your hatred for Nick Patrick.
Well, I mean, he's terrible. He's a terrible referee.
That was the head referee in WCW. Thank you very much. But yeah, it. You know when the really bad botch happened in this match, Matt? It happened when Sable walked in the ring. Yes. This match was a botch. Like I said, I like Tori. I think she did her best, but she was never a wrestler. She was super popular and very over, but she was never a wrestler. But yeah, I don't have nice things to say about Mrs. Lesnar. And I hope Brock doesn't hear that because I don't want to die.
Well, that would mean he actually shows up somewhere.
Good point. But yeah, she leaves after this, becomes Mrs. Brock Lesnar, and the rest, as they say, is history. And it gets better after that match, but I can't say it got better by much.
Yeah, next match was Hardcore Holly versus Mordecai.
This pay-per-view was such a snapshot of 2004.
Yeah, and it's like I said on the pre-show. It's like this show really is just the textbook definition of everything that was wrong with SmackDown in 2004.
Luther Reigns, Kenzo Suzuki, Sable, and Mordecai.
Not to mention Bradshaw as WWE champion.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Mordecai, who would later be Kevin Thorne in ECW. I'll be honest, I thought the Mordecai gimmick was interesting.
Yeah.
At first glance, right up until they did nothing with it.
Yeah. And the gimmick did end because Mordecai himself got involved in the bar fight, and so they took his character off of TV. But even before then, they weren't really doing that much with him.
Because here's the thing with Mordecai, and you could see it as clear as day. They wanted him to be a guy to wrestle Undertaker.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
He was a guy who they built for one reason, that was to wrestle the Undertaker, probably at Mania. The problem was that it kind of just fell flat. He really couldn't cut a promo. And when he got in the ring...
he wasn't really all that over either.
No, he wasn't over. And when he got in the ring, he was a generic big guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he really wasn't all that big. He was, I mean, relatively speaking, pretty sure he's like 6'5". But for a guy who was supposed to want to put in the ring with The Undertaker, he didn't do anything that made you go, okay, I can see where they might want to go with this. It was just bland. and very one note. So, and that's what they got. And they put him in the ring with Hardcore Holly.
This is going to end well, I'm sure.
Oh, totally. Tell me, did Mordecai get stiffed at all in this match?
Not that I could tell.
Because you're pretty much guaranteed to walk into a ring with Hardcore Holly and at least have one black eye afterward.
I mean, there is one spot where Holly just ties up Mordecai in the ropes for really no reason at all. Like, it's one of the most random spots you could do in a match like this.
In a match like this, you mean a shitty match?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah, okay. Mordecai won because they were still trying to push him. But there's nothing to this match. Just nothing. And you could tell at this part of the show that I think they had to cut some things out of a couple of the matches because Mysterio and Chavo went so long. Because
Maybe.
if you, because when
It
you look,
wouldn't surprise me.
because when you look at the times on the subsequent three matches, Suzuki, Billy Gunn, Sable Torrey, which was never going to go long anyway, but in Mordecai Hardcore Holly, they went 8 minutes, 6 minutes, 6.5 minutes. So they were very in and out matches, which on a pay-per-view, I mean, that's kind of, I mean, you'll get a short match or two on a pay-per-view, but they tend to like, supposed to be your times where you can have longer matches.
Yeah, it should be like high-profile matches.
You mean not Mordecai versus Hardcore Holly?
Yeah, that, and really the majority of matches on this card.
We're really not trying to rip this card so much, but it's just bad.
But that's what it is, though. Like, this, it really isn't that great of a card when you really look at it.
I mean, to this point, we really only talked about two matches fairly in depth for being any good, and it was the opener and Ray Chavo. And that was it up to this point. They gave us nothing in the first. This card, the main card had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, 7 matches. 4 of them were absolute garbage. When more than half the matches you're trying to put forth to the public at this renewed Great American Bash. Remember, this is supposed to be. The show has so much history. They're running it at one of the places it used to run in Norfolk. This is supposed to be a big deal. And 4 of these 7 matches are just garbage. That's inexcusable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they were thinking. They were probably thinking, well, Eddie's on the card and Taker's on the card, so that should be enough. And Ray is on the card, but it wasn't. I mean, those other matches are very good, but it doesn't save this pay-per-view. And I guess speaking of Eddie, we should get to that match. And it was, excuse me, for the WWE Championship in a match that shockingly wasn't the main event from this pay-per-view, but we'll get to that in a second. It was Eddie Guerrero, the defending champion, against John Bradshaw Layfield in a Texas Bull Rope match.
Yeah, if nothing else, this match at least feels like it could have taken place at Great American Bash in WCW, and it probably did at a couple of points, maybe.
Yeah, this is a very WCW NWA match. I mean, this is the Texas Bull Rope match is a Dusty Rhodes match.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and they had this is a WCW match at a WCW pay-per-view in a WCW city with a guy who used to work in WCW and Eddie Guerrero, who's from Texas, as well as John Mayfield. All the puzzle pieces fit. And this is a good match. It's not. I liked the match.
I didn't hate the match. I just thought it was okay. I thought the Judgment Day match was much better than this.
Yeah, the Judgment Day match is 100% better than this match. I don't think that's unfair. I liked how they called back to Judgment Day a lot in this match, with Eddie hitting John with the chair.
Yeah,
and doing some of the things to have callbacks, because I still hear that Judgment Day chair shot in my head. I still hear that in my head. And the bull rope is a nice concept. I think they use the rope well. But I think one of the issues this match suffered from was it felt kind of uneven.
Yeah.
Because Eddie doesn't get color in this match, does he?
I don't think he does. I do not think he does. I don't remember him getting covered in this match, and if he did, it was very it wasn't really all that substantial. Like, JBL does bleed in this match quite a bit. But I don't think Eddie gets busted open. I don't think.
I think this match was almost as a bit good for getting busted open at Judgment Day.
I think so as well.
Because they didn't want him to bleed out. Because he almost bled out at Judgment Day.
Yeah, and it's weird because out of all the matches that you could have a ton of blood for, you think this would be one of them, like a Texas Bull Rope match.
You think this? Yeah, you're right. This should, and that's what made it feel uneven. Both guys should be covered in blood from head to toe. It should look like a massacre.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked one-sided.
Yeah.
Which that might have been by design, considering how the match, what the finish was. But I think it kind of hurt the match. And I think it also kind of hurt the match because it wasn't the cowbell that busted JBL open.
It was the chair.
It was the chair. So you've immediately kind of rendered, if Eddie isn't going to bleed and John is going to get busted open by the chair, you've rendered the cowbell useless.
Pretty much.
the old saying about Chekhov's gun. If Chekhov has a gun in the first act, it means at some point during the play the gun will be used. They had the cowbell, but it never really come into play as a weapon. They used it as a weapon. I'm not saying they didn't use it. I'm saying it never had consequences to it because John was already bleeding, and apparently Eddie just wasn't going to bleed in this match. So what was the purpose of at the end of the day, what happens is, what was the purpose of the bull rope? But I think the thing with this match is, it isn't the match, it's the finish, right?
Yeah, like there is a bit of a dusty finish here, which I guess makes sense considering it's the Great American Bash. But so Eddie ends up like touching all four corners. That's what it seems like. Then Cornelio comes out and points out that JBL's back touched before Eddie did, which I'm going to call BS on that right now. Because earlier in the match, Eddie's back touched the turnbuckle at least twice.
Yes. I noticed that and I went, wait, the finish is A, but you didn't pay attention to A at the beginning of the match.
Like, yeah, like it was just so contrived.
Because I think in the first, because isn't Angle's explanation any body part touches?
Yeah, exactly.
So when JBL, in the first 5 minutes of the match, JBL grabs Eddie's head and runs it into the turnbuckle.
Exactly. Like,
so why didn't the light go off?
I wish I could say. I don't even know.
So to me, that screams they wanted to have a finish, but they didn't. But the finish didn't make total narrative sense.
They didn't think it through. That's the thing. They did not think this through at all. And Bradshaw ends up winning the title, and it kicks off what is one of
the worst
WWE title runs of all time. I hated his run as champion. Absolutely hated it.
10 months.
That's the thing. Like, it's bad enough he even held it in the first place. The fact that he holds it for nearly a year is astounding to me.
And remember, they basically hot-shotted him into this position. Because
like as soon as he became JBL, like the same night he became that JBL character was the same night he attacked Eddie Guerrero and kickstarted this feud.
Like, I understand they had to do something because Farouk couldn't wrestle anymore. That was the genesis of this. The APA had to break up because Farouk couldn't go anymore.
Yeah, not only that, but also Brock Lesnar had also left around that time, and Kurt Angle had to take a few while he's which is why he's GM. So
yeah, he had,
and Big Show was also out of action for a bit. So there wasn't a huge amount of heels for SmackDown at that time. So I can understand why they made JBL sort of the top heel. I don't think it necessarily worked, but I can at least see why they did it.
They were trying to make the lemonade out of lemons. The problem was they picked a guy who nobody ever looked at as, you know what, maybe he could be champion. Because
Bradshaw was mid-card at best.
Yeah.
And even then, I don't know.
if we're being honest about the career of Bradshaw up to that point, he was a comedy act.
Yeah. Especially like the APA and stuff like that.
Now, I loved the APA.
Oh, same here. Same here. It was the only time I found Bradshaw actually tolerable.
Because he was being himself.
Yeah.
JBL is a sarcastic asshole. I mean, let's not mix words here. The man, the person, John Layfield, is a prick.
Yeah.
He's a bully. We've heard so many stories about that. That he was just an unrepentant bastard backstage. So what they did was they let him be that, and they also kind of made him into a goofy, half drunk guy, and that's what made the APA work. Because at the very least, he did have some sense of comedic timing.
Yeah, especially that Texas speech he does at WrestleMania 17.
Oh yeah. He was but the other side of Bradshaw is, like I said, he's a pompous asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shoot. He does play the stock market. He is an investor. He had his own segments on Fox News as a legitimate businessman, as a guy who read the market and made money and all that kind of stuff. So they basically just took him from one side of himself to another side of himself and turned it into a character. But nowhere in that whole description did I say he was WWE Championship material.
Because he wasn't.
Because he wasn't. People like to point out, well, that's how Edge started out. And I'm like, yeah, but Edge had charisma.
Oh, yeah, totally.
And
Edge could actually wrestle a match.
Edge could wrestle a match.
Edge actually had talent.
Yes. Edge, and when they did decide to run with Edge, it gave a whole new life to his career. Because it gave him a chance to... I apologize. It gave him a chance to show what he could do.
Yeah. And on the podcast before, I think if Edge didn't get injured in 2003, he probably would have won the title later on in 2003. Because that's how hot he was around that time. Because he was super over with the fans.
Wasn't he running with Hogan in 03?
Yeah, like in 02, he and Hogan won the tag team titles on the 4th of July SmackDown.
I remember that. He was already building up momentum, and like you said, he got hurt. Which I think, was it the 03 injury that eventually led to his retirement?
Yeah, because it was where he had to have like neck surgery around that time. So I think that was really sort of, I guess, kind of like the beginning of the end for him as a wrestler.
That's when the clock started ticking. But with Layfield, with Edge, they built to it. They did build it. There was a build there. He did other things. He was Intercontinental Champion. He won another tag run. They put him with Hogan. So they had steps to kind of put Edge in a position to be shown as a bigger star. With Layfield, I'm pretty certain this all happened in the span of 3 or 4 months?
Yeah, I think it was like 3 months, I think. 2-3 months, something like that.
And so not only was he in a WWE Championship match, he wins the title. And then we go on into just And let's not forget that this whole Eddie JBL feud was some of the most racist shit on television.
Yeah. I think that might be the most insulting thing about it all, is that the racist essentially wins in the end.
Not like we haven't been through that before.
Yeah, like, heels win all the time. Yeah, this isn't a new thing for WWE. They've been doing it for a long, long time.
I mean, wasn't it just a few years before this? If I'm not mistaken, Hunter went over Booker.
It was like a year before.
So the racist wins, apparently, in WWE.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I will never forget that segment they did on SmackDown when JBL is literally on the border
Mm-hmm.
and he's hunting for border crossers. And they find this guy. I don't know if that guy was an actor or not. The guy he ran into and he like kicked and ran away. But it was some of the most racist shit I have ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit here and say it shocks me because that's kind of. I will say that. Let's just say this. That fits JBL's personal politics perfectly. And that's what I would say about that. But
I mean, he was on Fox News, so it kind of adds up.
Yeah. But the stuff he would say to. Didn't they also involve Eddie's mom?
I think it was at some live event where JBL forced, I'm trying to remember exactly how it went down. It was like JBL kept shaking her, and they ended up, Eddie's mother ended up having like a worked heart attack in storyline.
And look, I'm not going to say that was. I mean, yes, that was. That was messed up.
Yeah.
Extremely. But Mrs. Guerrero has been around the business a very long time. So I'm sure she was fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's one of those things like, what are you doing? This guy is saying some horrible shit. At the same time, what always blew my mind is that in the same breath that JBL would say some horrible shit, he would bring up how he was at Eddie's wedding. Like, you filthy Guerreros, I've always hated you. I hated you when I was at your wedding. And it's like, wait, what? He would say some horrible stuff about Mexicans and then bring up how I stood up at your wedding. It's like, oh, dude, which is it? But yeah, this was the beginning of JBL's run as champion, none of which was memorable.
I mean, the crowd did the wave during this match against Undertaker at SummerSlam.
You're right, they did. He went up against Undertaker. He wrestled Cena. Who else? He wrestled Booker, I think, once.
Yeah, Survivor Series. He also wrestled Big Show in a barbed wire cage match.
Yeah, I don't think WWE did that again.
Yeah, I think that's might be. Yeah, I think that's the only time he ever did that. I think. Yeah, it's the only time that they did that match.
It's because you can't control barbed wire. When barbed wire cuts you,
and I think they also they also did a last ride match with him and Undertaker, which was essentially a ambulance match but with a hearse.
Right. I still hear JBL's promos in my head. And not anything he said, just that loud ass Texas voice.
Yeah.
Because
he reminds me of Miz a lot when he does the promo now I think about it. Just the way that they just get so intense. And it's like it doesn't make you any more memorable. You just come off as overcompensating.
Well, no. Miz is actually talented.
Uh,
We're talking about Layfield. You compliment the Miz right now.
Same difference. Same difference.
You do it right now. But no, when the Miz does it, when Miz cuts a promo, the crowd they get into it. He is pissing off the crowd. But the other thing about Miz promos are they never go an absurd length.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
Has Miz ever cut anything longer than a 3-minute promo? Like in one long go?
It depends on whether he's doing like a Miz TV segment or not, which seems to be every other week now. But that's a different story.
Let it out, my son. But whenever Miz speaks, he always speaks a reasonable amount of time, even if he's in a fairly long segment. When JBL cut promos, that dude likes to hear himself talk.
Oh, yeah.
I remember those. Do you remember those 10-minute JBL segments?
I wish I could forget him.
That dude would talk and talk. And the worst thing about it was because the way his voice he would project his voice, so he'd always end up talking like this, where he is projecting his voice out to the crowd. And he had that Texas accent. And what ended up happening was it droned. It just sounded like you would. There isn't a lick of difference between a JBL promo and a bullhorn. Because with both, it's like you're hitting a button and just a stream of noise comes out. And you can't get out of your head because it hits the decibels and the pitch of his chosen speaking voice at that time would just hit your ear and it would get into your brain and you wanted to jump off the roof of your house to make the noise stop. And he never changed his promo style. Even when he was yelling, his voice never changed. It's like when you're playing an instrument and you have to hold one note for a long time and you eventually drown it out, but you can still hear the tone of the note in your ear. That was a JBL promo for 10 months. And people booed him. And, they reacted to him as a heel, but not because he was doing an effective job as a heel. Because people wanted him to shut the fuck up.
Yes, it was go away heat. Absolutely.
And the problem was he would never shut the fuck up.
And he would always freaking win.
Yeah,
he would just always win.
That was the problem. Let's not, revise history. He had some heat.
At first, anyway.
At first. By month 4, it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, they never got it back. And it's like they were booking JBL like they booked Triple H.
Mm-hmm.
Without none of the earned accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Heyman has that famous line.
At ECW.
Yeah, like the only reason you were WWE champion is because Triple H didn't want to work Tuesdays. It wouldn't surprise me if they did give JBL's title run if they did give a planned Triple H title run to JBL.
When he said that, I really went, that's probably true.
Yeah.
Because it would totally be Triple H at the time to think he was bigger than SmackDown.
Yeah.
So who did they have? It became that situation, and that's how JBL got the belt. I mean, they probably, when you go back and look at it, because Cena didn't have a run with the belt by this point, right? He was still doing the upper mid card thing.
Yeah, he was still upper mid card. He didn't win the WWE title until WrestleMania 21.
I know that's what they groomed Cena for, but I think they could have saved themselves a lot of trouble had they pulled the trigger on Cena sooner. Because JBL didn't need to be champion for 10 months.
They probably could have done that at SummerSlam or even Survivor Series, and it probably would have been fine.
Because you could do a show on JBL's title run. You know that, right?
Yeah, I definitely could. I don't have any interest in doing it. But I probably could.
But it's because his title run is such a big part, unfortunately, of the Ruthless Aggression era.
Yeah.
Because it just... JBL sucked the air out of the room. Every time. And then he did the bullshit with the cabinet.
Oh, God, I forgot about the cabinet. Oh, God.
How could you forget about Orlando Jordan and the Basham brothers?
And wasn't there some Diva Search contestant in there as well?
Jillian Hall.
I think that might have been after this. There was, I can't remember the name of it. It was somebody else, I think.
Wasn't it Jillian Hall? Because she was still working the mole gimmick?
I think that was after that. I think that was by WrestleMania 22. She was with JBL. I want to say it was like Joy Giovanni or somebody like that. I don't know if that's who it was, but it was some Diva Search contestant.
No, it was Jillian Hall. She was the spin doctor. They brought her in as the spin doctor to help fix his career.
But that was after the whole WWE title run, I think. I'm positive it was.
Because he created the cabinet a little while after he won the title.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And then
Amy Weber, that's who it was.
I'm looking at it now. Amy Weber was the original girl. But they quote unquote, fired her. And then they brought in Jillian to be
Yeah, you are
was
right.
spent.
Julian was part of that. I thought, I thought the cabinet was over when JBL lost the title. Apparently, it was still going on in 2006.
Yeah, that thing lasted way too long.
Yeah, I could have sworn that JBL and Julian were just their own thing, but I guess they were part of the cabinet.
Yeah. You want to hear some really sad things about JBL during this time? Things that actually happened.
Uh, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
In the year 2005, so granted after this pay-per-view, but since we're talking about since this is where he won the belt, we might as well go into this a little bit. In the year 2005, John Bradshaw Layfield was rated number 5 in the PWI 500.
Oh God.
In 2004, he was voted best gimmick by the Observer.
Are you kidding me?
No, in 04.
Eugene was a better gimmick than JBL.
Yeah. When that gimmick was at its most racist, it won best gimmick. Yeah, that you want to that okay? That I might throw up now. That can you imagine? Looking back on that, number 5, he was considered by a respected wrestling magazine out of the 500 best workers in the world at that time. Let me go back at that list because JBL has never been a great worker. He was always just a brawler.
Yeah.
So that's in the year 2005. Like I said, JBL was number 5. Do you want to know who was ahead of him? The only 4 guys ahead of him were Triple H was number 4. Satoshi Kojima was number 3. Cena was number 2, and Dave Bautista was number 1 in 05. So
That makes sense.
Here's who Bradshaw was ahead. Kurt Angle.
Oh, come on.
The phenomenal AJ Styles.
You're breaking me, Adam. You're breaking me.
Edge. Shelton Benjamin. And Hiroyoshi Tenzan, who was still at this point major over in New Japan. So apparently in the year 2005, John Bradshaw Layfield was a better wrestler than Kurt Angle and AJ Styles. Yeah, no. Not even a little.
Not even close.
And I wish I could. I could sit here and tell you guys like it wasn't that bad. It wasn't. No, it was that bad.
Yeah, it really was, and I don't know. Like, I'll be finding out for myself as I go through these pay-per-views and see his entire run as champion. But from what I remember, it wasn't good. It really wasn't. With that said, his ring was better than Jinder's, but
okay,
not by much.
Low bar.
Yeah, exactly. It's a low bar, pretty much.
Oh my god, I actually found the whole list, and I won't go into the list, but some of the names he's above just make me want to cry. Uh, at this time, Benoit, Mysterio, Guerrero, Kenta Kobashi, the Fallen Angel Christopher Daniels, young Samoa Joe, El Hijo del Santo, Taker, Jericho, Orton, Marufuji. I know this is later on Shawn Michaels, but John Bradshaw Layfield on any list should never be above Shawn Michaels.
Absolutely. Shawn Michaels was still doing classics in 05 for the most part.
Yeah.
Even his match with Hogan, which is way better than which even that like even that is way better than the JBL match.
Jushin Thunder Liger, CM Punk, Misawa, Dr. Wagner Jr. I mean, like I said, I could go down this list and make you sadder and sadder, but I won't. Oh, by the way, Matt, Eugene is on this list. At number 56. But enough about Layfield, because if I talk about him anymore, I'll just get mad.
Overall, this match, I thought this match was okay. I do not agree with the decision to give JBL the title, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, this was too much too soon. I liked the match, but like I said, it felt uneven, and they didn't use the stipulation they had to their best ability, which at the very least you would thought for a guy like Guerrero and a brawler type like Layfield, this should have been their element, but it wasn't. I mean, that they worked the match fine. It never kicked into a gear that made it a classic. Yeah. Which I think it could have been, considering the elements at play. But this match wasn't the main event. Once again, the WWE Championship not headlining a pay-per-view. I wish I could say I was shocked, but I'm not.
I mean, I can see why this particular match did main event considering what happened after it. The main event of this match was The Undertaker versus the Dudley Boys in the first ever, and I believe last ever, Concrete Crypt match.
There's a reason why it was the last ever.
This match all started when Paul Heyman, quit. He quits as SmackDown GM. He's back like a couple weeks later on SmackDown. So he basically like encourages the Dudley Boys to get it streamed, tries to motivate them, and the Dudley Boys end up kidnapping Paul Bearer. And Paul Heyman steals the urn, forces the Undertaker to align with him and the Dudley Boys. And this leads to this match where Paul Bearer will be buried alive in concrete unless the Undertaker, quote, does the right thing, by which Paul Heyman means job to the Dudley Boys. This is a weird matchup. This is a weird feud.
We should also detail that this match Paul is Bearer is getting ready to walk out the door. He's leaving.
I mean, he's being written off of TV because I believe he had gallbladder surgery. Like from what I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, but just from what I've heard, apparently he was on the creative team for a year after this.
Yep. From what I've heard Paul talk about this, he was basically given ideas. I don't know if he was out there, having booking decisions,
Mm-hmm.
but I know he's helping. Kind of like what Paul Heyman's doing now,
Yeah.
ironically.
Yeah.
But I also know from what Paul said, I'll call him Percy because that's who he used to go by. Just so we don't get Paul Heyman and Paul Bearer confused.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, what Percy was saying in interviews after this, he wanted to go home.
Yeah.
He wanted to go home. They brought him back sort of as the rebirth of the Undertaker. What was it? The previous Mania?
Yeah, just a few months prior to this.
And we're already
it was really just like a nostalgia pop more than anything else.
It was a nostalgia pop, but they kept bringing him out. And it got to a point he wasn't doing anything because Taker was babyface.
Yeah, and I think more than anything else, I think and this is no slight to Paul Bearer, who I think is one of the best managers of all time. But at this point in time, Undertaker didn't really need Paul Bearer anymore.
No. Bearer was always a mouthpiece.
Mm-hmm.
When Taker couldn't talk. Well, not couldn't talk, just didn't talk.
Right.
That's what Bearer's function was. He was a long-time manager. I mean, for those who don't know, and if you don't know, please go watch our friends over at the Connoisseurs of Wrestling every Monday night at 9 o'clock. They did a show on Paul when he passed. Not when he passed, but as a tribute to Paul because they're all big fans of Paul Bearer. William Moody is his real name. Paul had been around the business for years. He went back to the old WCCW days. He was managing in the Sportatorium as Percy Pringle III. So he was always a veteran manager who helped guide those early stages of The Undertaker. And Kane. He was so intricate to Kane's start, too. And when Kane wasn't talking, Bearer was the mouthpiece.
Yeah, and one thing I've always wondered if they ever thought about putting Paul Bearer and Kane back together around this time.
Because Kane was working heel.
Because I think Kane really could have used someone like Paul Bearer at this point in time. Because Kane was just kind of lost at this point in time.
Yeah, wasn't Kane working heel?
Yeah, he was. He was working heel in 2004.
I think they could have, but I think they never. Bearer was always attached to the Undertaker.
Mm-hmm.
And for better or worse, WWE never looked further past it than that, despite his history with Kane. But I just don't think they ever really did put two and two together. Plus, Kane was working Raw, I think, at the time.
Yeah, he was.
And I think Raw had a harder schedule.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case.
So I know Bearer was getting tired because when they brought Bearer back, they brought him back under the stipulation by Vince he had to lose weight.
Yeah, he had gastric bypass surgery.
And that prolonged his life.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was going to die.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong around this time, but isn't it also around this time his wife passed away?
I think so. It might have been a few years after this, but I think it's around that timeline. I think.
Because I think he just said that at the end of the day, when it came to Paul Bearer, he wanted to go home.
It was 2009.
Okay, so it was much later.
Yeah, I think I remember him saying like that's what motivated him to do one last run in 2010. Was that she would want him back working again?
Yeah. So, but Paul wanted to leave. He was kind of the spare prick at the wedding. They just didn't have anything for him. And if Paul Bearer isn't out there cutting promos, what was his use?
Yeah, and as great as Paul Bearer was, and the Attitude Era podcast said this pretty perfectly in the WrestleMania 2000 review, one of my favorite episodes by them, so go and check it out. But they said something that I absolutely agree with, is that as great as Paul Bearer was, that character really only worked with two people, Kane and Undertaker.
Right.
And he managed guys like Mankind and Vader as well, but it was mainly Taker and Kane.
Yeah, and
there wasn't really anybody else like them at this point in time.
You mean they couldn't have put him with Mordecai? I'm so sorry.
That would have been an interesting pair, but I don't know if it would have worked.
Yeah, no, there was nothing for him to do. And if I'm being honest, I don't know how much he was enjoying himself.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So it was kind of time for Percy to go. The Dudley Boys part of this is just weird.
Yeah, like it's a very random pick.
Like,
and honestly, with the Dudley Boys, it could have been anybody else in that spot, and it probably wouldn't have made a difference.
No, because this match,
and I love the Dudley Boys, but that was just the way it was.
And this is also kind of an early setup for Paul to quote unquote bring back ECW. Because One Night Stand is what?
It's about a year later after this.
The next year.
Mm-hmm.
It may not even be 12 calendar months.
I think I want to say it was like exactly 1 year after this.
Right. So this
because I think this happened in June of 2004, and ECW One Night Stand was in June of 2005. So I think it might have been exactly 1 year.
Okay. So this is almost sort of the progenitor of that.
A little bit.
But it's not that Paul Heyman's a bad promo. It's not that Paul Heyman's a bad manager, because he's not. He's one of the best managers ever. The Dudley Boys are one of the best tag teams ever. Taker's one of the best ever, period. It just doesn't work. This whole match, the whole setup to this match, the setup for they're not setting up a match. They're setting up a post-match angle.
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of hurts this match a little bit, because nobody really cares about the actual match itself. They care about what happens after the match.
They were all kind of worried about the dude in the case of cement.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Bearer was mic'd, so you had to hear Bearer the whole time.
Yeah, like he would always say, like, "I hate you, I hate you,
I hate you," and then Taker would go on offense. Oh yes,
oh yes.
That was actually pretty good.
Thanks.
Basically, what happens is they have the match. Taker gets the upper hand. Tombstone pile driver on
I did like one spot in the match where Undertaker goes for old school on one of the Dudleys, and Paul Heyman just gets on the mic, bad dog, bad dog, bad dog.
That was funny. But it pretty much comes down to what the two. It ends with Taker tombstoning Devon. 1, 2, 3. And then it comes time to do the post-match angle. And, well, you describe it to the people, Matt.
Well, after the match, Paul Heyman is like, I thought we had an arrangement. I thought you were going to do the right thing. I guess I'm going to have to do the right thing. He goes to finish the job, and a lightning bolt strikes near the entrance area. Paul Heyman gets chased out off the stage by Undertaker, and Undertaker takes a knee, bows to Paul Bearer, and then he gets on the mic and says, like, and they actually do it pretty well. Like, it's obvious that Paul Bearer isn't actually there. Like,
Right.
oh, this is something I actually wanted to mention to you. Have you seen the rehearsal footage of this angle on YouTube?
I saw it, but I didn't watch it. I should have.
I think the Paul Bearer stuff comes from there. I think they take the Paul Bearer stuff earlier in the day, and they splice it into the live footage.
I think you're probably right. Because
you never see Undertaker and Paul Bearer on screen together. You never see Paul Heyman and Paul Bearer on screen together.
No.
And when they do, like, when they do show Paul Bearer, like, actually watching the match, it's always from the back of his head. So I think there was a stuntman there in the crypt.
Or a mannequin or something.
Yeah.
Which had to be weird for the people who paid to see the match.
Yeah.
They had to be going, well, what the hell is this? But at the end of the day, what happens is Taker basically says,
Paul, I have no other choice. Rest in peace. And I do like Paul Bearer's reaction. It's like, Undertaker will save me. Save me, Undertaker. Save me, Undertaker. And that's when Undertaker grabs the mic. And I like that. And after Undertaker says that line, I have no other choice, rest in peace, he pulls down the lever and buries Paul Heyman. Undertaker essentially kills Paul Bearer here on a live pay-per-view. And that's how it ends.
Go a step further. Remember, in kayfabe, that's his father. Undertaker commits patricide on a pay-per-view.
Would Paul Bearer be his father?
Yes. Remember? Go back to the Kane and Undertaker angle from the 90s.
I thought Paul Bearer would be Kane's father.
He's both their father. Because how else would they be? Well, the mother. That's right.
Yeah, the mother. They share a mother.
Okay. You're making me think. I don't like it.
Yeah, because Undertaker's dad taught Paul Bearer's character how to be a mortician. And then one night, Paul Bearer and Undertaker's mom end up doing the deed, as it were. And that's how Kane is born.
That's right. He isn't Taker's father, he's Kane's father. But they always kind of addressed him as his father. It's a weird thing.
I can see where you're coming from.
But yeah, he kills his brother's father on television.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, did you watch this live, or did you hear about this live? And if so, what were your thoughts on this angle?
I watched this pay-per-view live at a friend's house, if I remember correctly, or he recorded it for me and gave me a disc, and I watched it. I forget which one it was. And my reaction to this show basically was, what the hell just happened?
Yeah,
And that's kind of how this show leaves you, because Taker fills up that thing with concrete and the glass breaks, remember?
yeah,
The glass shatters, but they never show anything after that, because obviously, had the glass shattered, the concrete would have filtered out, and Paul Bear would still be alive. It's it,
and they do explain it on SmackDown later that week. They say that Paul Bearer was gravely injured. Like, that's how they kind of get away with it. Like, he was just
he didn't
very,
die.
very
He didn't die. He didn't totally
yeah,
just suck down a bunch of concrete into his lungs.
yeah.
No, he's fine.
And they also explain Undertaker as saying that and this is what they say in the video package for it. He says that Paul Heyman did have a point. I had a weakness known as Paul Bearer. And it's like, if I could do that to the one person that I actually cared about, imagine what I could do to you, Paul Heyman. And that sort of like sets up a Paul Heyman Undertaker feud for the rest of the year. Like, because Heinrich later on gets brought into the equation as Paul Heyman's client. So,
Oh yeah, Heidenreich. Another snapshot of 2004. Oh God.
so yeah. As far as the match itself goes, it was fine. I mean,
It's a
it was
handicap
what
match.
it was.
It's a
Yeah, like
handicap.
it was a SmackDown match, is what it was.
Yeah. To me, this show, outside of the Bull Rope match, could have been a SmackDown.
Yeah, yeah, because for me, it was just a mediocre show for me. If it wasn't for Rey Mysterio and Chavo Guerrero having that great match, this would have been a terrible show.
Yes.
But because of that match, it gets upgraded to mediocre.
This is a C show.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to give it a letter grade, it's a C. It's not even
honestly, I would go further than that. I would give it a D minus.
You know what? I can't argue against that. It is just such a blah show that people remember the Bull Rope match and remember Paul Bearer being encased in concrete when they should remember the Ray Chavo match.
Oh yeah, totally.
The wrong thing gets remembered from this pay-per-view. Hell, I'd go so far to say is the only thing people remember from this match is the Torrie Wilson promo poster.
Yeah.
Not saying that's a bad thing.
Yes, I blame people for remembering something like that.
No, I'm not going to blame people. I'm just saying this pay-per-view is a mixed bag, and a lot of it isn't good. Because, I mean, let's be honest. They had no business pushing Kenzo Suzuki. No business pushing Heinrich. This is around the time they tried to make Hardcore Holly into a singles main event star.
Yeah, like earlier in the year when they had him go one-on-one with Brock Lesnar for the title.
Yeah, he had a pay-per-view title match.
At a Big Four show, no less.
Right. What the hell was that? And then you had the Sable and this show really is just a snapshot of where the company was in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier on the show, it really is just a textbook example of everything that was wrong with WWE, more so everything that was wrong with SmackDown in 2004. It really is just a time capsule show.
A lot of people talk about the Ruthless Aggression era being pretty good.
This is some of the worst of that era.
Yeah, no, this is some of the worst of that era. Because over on Raw, Triple H was smack dab in the middle of the Reign of Terror.
Not so much here. Benoit was still holding the title at this time.
Okay, so
I mean, by September he wins it back, but really, like the worst of the Reign of Terror is more or less over at this time.
It doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it. Like he gets like one last reign with the title by the end of 2004 before he ends up losing to Batista.
Yeah, but he was still a main focus of the show.
True. I mean, he did main event Bad Blood over Benoit, but
I was at that pay-per-view.
Oh yeah,
I got to see Hunter and Sean in a Hell in a Cell
for 47 minutes.
In front of 9,000 people. What was the attendance for the Bash?
Let's see.
$6,500.
Yeah, 6,500.
That's an 11,000 seat arena.
Yeah, and the event also grossed 325,000 and received a 0.47 buy rate.
The buy rate wasn't bad. Wasn't good. This show was just like you said. It didn't do only 6,500 sales for an 11,000 seat building isn't great. But it was just such a mediocre show that I can't say it should have made more money or did a better buy rate.
Mm-hmm.
Because it didn't
probably
deserve
did too much.
Probably. Probably. You're probably right. I mean, I wish I could have other things to say here, but I don't. Because like this, when you look back on it, really the story is the Bash should have been so much better than it was. But they, just from a pure historical perspective, but they didn't put the card out there to match the significance of the pay-per-view. So the whole thing suffered. It just, and then once they, Bash 05 comes around, and I mean, the Great American Bash is gone by when? 2010? Let me look that up. Sorry, people. I know this is riveting podcasting, but like the Great American, they bring it back there in 04. Then Remember they changed it to the Bash in 2009?
Yeah, they did. They just changed it to the Bash.
They bring it back as a TV, as a super show in 2012.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember they did like one SmackDown where they did the old Great American Bash angle for that SmackDown.
And it's been gone ever since. I apologize again. Sorry for the coughing, folks. And that was on Sci-Fi when SmackDown was on Sci-Fi. So it comes back in 04. It's pretty much gone 5 years later. And they tried again in 12 as a themed TV episode, and they haven't brought it back. So really the story of this is the beginning of something that should have been promising, but they never put the time in. They never really put the cards out there. And 5 years later, they change the name and then they drop it. That's sort of the story here. Any other, thoughts about this card, Matt, while I'm rambling?
My final thoughts on Great American Bash 2004 is, I would just say, just watch Rey Mysterio, Chavo Guerrero.
Yes.
Other than that, just skip it.
Yeah.
Good. This is the worst show of 2004 so far in the Ruthless Aggression era.
This is one of the worst shows on.
It's probably one of the worst shows in the era so far. Not even just 2004, probably one of the worst since the era even started.
Mm-hmm. This might be of the era. This might be the worst, one of the worst shows of just that time period.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, I really don't have any final thoughts outside of what I've already said. It's just, it's mediocre. If it was bad in a sense that it was so bad that it was memorable, that'd be one thing.
And in parts it is. In parts it is, like with the Concrete Crypt stuff specifically.
Yeah, that was hokey and just rough. Sable and Tori. Yeah, and Luther Reigns. And it gets pretty bad, but like you see the fatal 4-way elimination in Chavo Ray and kind of JBL Eddie kind of redeemed the pay-per-view, but not to a sense that it's a good pay-per-view. It's just that
Right.
it could have been so much worse, and it almost was. It just kind of got saved. And I wish I had more for you, but I don't. So, however you want to carry on from here, sir, it's your show.
Yeah, so I think that just about ends the show for this week. Next week there won't be a new show because I have to work next Friday. But the Friday after that, there will be a new show. And it's going to be another book review. And this episode has been a long time coming. This episode will be on Ric Flair's book, To Be the Man, which, let's face it, really should be Becky Lynch's book, but that's neither here nor there.
Listen. Two things. One, I have that book. I used to be a major mark for those WWE autobiographies.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good book. Some of it you might wonder, is he telling the truth? You know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Is there some creative writing? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But the second thing is, Becky Lynch is the man right now. Ric Flair is the man for all time. And don't you forget it.
Yeah. Well, don't forget the key word there, Adam. Was. He was the man. Becky Lynch is the
Oh,
man.
okay. I can't wait for you to do the Hulk Hogan book review.
So yeah,
Yeah.
not next Friday, but the Friday after that will be Ric Flair's "To Be the Man" review. So it should be pretty interesting.
It's an interesting, just as a bit of a preview for you, for those interested. It is interesting. Rick led a very interesting life.
He lived the gimmick, so to speak.
Yes, it wasn't just a gimmick. It's
For better or for worse.
yes, but he had a very interesting beginning to his life.
Mm-hmm.
His childhood is kind of interesting, and that kind of plays into his psyche a little bit, which leads to some of the things that he ends up doing in his life. But he never half-assed it ever. He was always a guy who ran hard, and it showed at the end. Here at the tail end of his life now. But it's a fascinating book. It really is. So if you haven't read it, please do, and tune in 2 weeks from now for the book review.
Yep. So I think that just about does it for this episode. Gonna give a few plugs now. Violent Wrestling Podcast every Tuesday and possibly Wednesday night. Mox, AA, and myself talk about everything in the wrestling industry, including WWE and MLW, which I really need to catch up on. I'm on a Christmas Day special episode that they did. So going to try and catch up on that after this podcast. Connoisseurs of Wrestling every Monday night with Taker's Minion, Legends of Over, Biff Kensington, and George Estaves. Grounds for Development with 5, Saskatchewan Spinning Nerve Hold, and Biff Kensington every Thursday morning. Shooting the Breeze with Taker's Minion and Mr. Dr. Sinju every Saturday morning on Twitch. Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. Let's see what else. Two Guys, One Sport every Thursday on Twitch as well, as I believe.
Mm-hmm. You can find the whole Los Ingobernables de Podcast family over at Twitch at the given times Matt mentioned. And for those who are wondering about Mr. Kensington and his status on his shows, he's still there, everybody. He's just having computer issues. So he'll be along. It just might take some time.
Yep, so I think that just about does for this episode. Thank you very much, Adam Rice, for being on here. This was a lot of fun. It was a great return to form, if I do say so myself, for the Ruthless Aggression Era podcast.
I would have to agree. And as always, thank you for having me.
No problem. Glad to have you. So that is all for the Ruthless Aggression Era podcast this week. And I will see you all next time. See ya.
Have a good night, everyone.